Rappers often write songs about murder, but the majority of the time, it's just fiction. A story written to send a message to the listener about the dangers of the streets. But sometimes, these stories aren't fiction at all, and rappers commit one of the most heinous crimes imaginable. While some of these rappers are locked up for what they did, others got away with it and still walk free to this day. Like DaBaby, a man who was literally caught in 4K and wrote a song about it. DaBaby has had plenty of well-known run-ins with the law, including an alleged armed robbery, assault, etc. But his most notorious case goes all the way back to 2018, when in November of that year, DaBaby was shopping at a Walmart in Huntersville, North Carolina, when he spotted a pair of teens named Jalen Craig and Henry Douglas watching him like they recognized him. DaBaby felt like the teens were plotting on him. He said that it was clear that they had ill intentions and felt like if he didn't confront them, they might pull a gun on his family or something. So, DaBaby approached the two and the conversation turned hostile. Both sides tell different stories. According to Henry Douglas, DaBaby was intent on creating an issue from the start and was very aggressive. But according to DaBaby, that story is far from the truth. DaBaby broke into a fight with Douglas and Craig, and then this happened. In case it wasn't clear from the footage, DaBaby's girl hopped in the middle of the fight to break it up, but while she did, DaBaby saw Craig reach into his waistline and assumed he was grabbing a gun. So, DaBaby drew his and shot and killed Craig. DaBaby was arrested for the shooting, but once it went to court, the judge determined that the shooting was in self-defense like he claimed, and he was let off with a misdemeanor charge for carrying the gun. The situation is where the lyric in DaBaby's song Rockstar comes from. My daughter a G. She saw me kill a Igga in front of her before the age of 2, and I'll kill another Igga too, for I let another Igga do something to you. Long as you know that, don't let nobody tell you different. Daddy love you. Police have gone back and re-reviewed the footage a few times since the verdict to make sure it really was self-defense, but seemingly by all accounts, it was. Gucci Mane is similar to DaBaby in that he also took another person's life in self-defense, but his story is much darker and has left an aura of intimidation around Gucci like no other. Gucci's murder case all stems from rap beef, which probably isn't that big of a surprise. Back in May of 2005, when Gucci Mane was still an up-and-coming rapper in the Atlanta rap scene, he collaborated with another rapper named Jeezy on a song named Icy. And going into recording the song, Jeezy believed that it would be on his debut album, Let's Get It, Thug Motivation 101, but instead, Gucci went behind Jeezy's back and tossed it on his debut independent album, Trap House. Jeezy was furious, to say the least, especially because, according to him, he never received any money for his appearance on the track. He released the now notorious diss track, Stay Strapped, shortly after the drama, and during the song, he put a bounty on Gucci's chain. I got a bounty on that shit, Igga, 10 stacks. So if he comes to your town and you just happen to snatch that mother-ucker off his neck, I'm gonna shoot you to 10 stack, man, so I can cremate that mother-ucker. Gucci didn't take Jeezy's diss lightly, so he released Round 1 not too long after and fired shots straight back at Jeezy. That Igga young Jeezy, man, that Igga fake. This is round 1 of Gucci Mane versus Jeezy, and with all the back and forth, well, Jeezy associates came to collect that bounty. On May 19th of 2005, while Gucci Mane was visiting a friend, 4 men broke into where he was hanging out and jumped him. While they were, one of the men threatened to flat out shoot Gucci, and in response, he pulled out a gun of his own. When the smoke cleared, Gucci had hit one man, and that man turned out to be Henry Lee Clark III, also known as Pookie Loc, a known associate of Jeezy. Shortly after the shooting, Pookie Loc's body was found near a local middle school in Decatur, Georgia, and a few days later, Gucci turned himself into the police after a warrant was issued for his arrest. Almost immediately after turning himself in, a phone interview with Gucci was released. During the interview, he said that he had deep regret over what happened, and he was many things, but he was not a murderer. He was scared, but he did what he had to do. Jeezy, on the other hand, claimed that he had no involvement with the shooting at all, trying to completely wash his hands of the situation, despite setting the bounty in his song and the murder victim being signed to his record label. 9 months after Gucci did that interview from inside, he was completely acquitted for the murder. His self-defense claim worked. He admitted to shooting at the men that broke into the house that night, and he even admitted that he was indeed the one who killed Pookie Loc, but it was all in self-defense, and he had a witness that backed him up. So with no evidence to prove otherwise, Gucci was released.
I was young, but I did some things that's fucked up, did wrong to people. And everybody in the neighborhood know that, so ain't no going around that.
Even with the murder, even though it was self-defense, do you ever think about that? Do you think like maybe I could have handled that different, especially when you did like the diss record?
He needed to be in the ground. Put his ass where he supposed to be.
That's the old Gucci still there?
Nah, that's the truth,
Yeah,
man.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, if somebody comes to you, try to kill you,
Yeah.
you know, and self-defense. So somebody try to kill you, you know, you gotta do what you gotta do.
Gotta do what you gotta do,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Gucci and Jeezy continued to beef after the incident on and off for years, but after Gucci spent 2 years in prison over some firearm charges, he came out a completely different man. Gucci went from being one of the most feared men in hip-hop, known for his ruthlessness and literally winning a real-life 5v1, to now a relatively uncontroversial figure that many people look to as a key example that anybody can change, no matter who they are. Another man that many look up to in hip-hop is Snoop Dogg. He's by far one of the most well-respected names in not only hip-hop, but music. However, what many don't know is that back in 1993, he was put on trial for taking part in a brutal drive-by shooting. What's most interesting about Snoop Dogg and his past is that mostly everyone knows and understands that at one point he was an active Crip. I mean, there's a reason he loves the color blue so much. However, what many don't understand is that the now well-respected Unk, known for his crippling addiction to Mary J, was really about that life. And while he was a gang member, he took part in many crimes, just like any other gang member would. And in 1993, Snoop had one of the most sobering experiences of his life when he realized he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. The day started off pretty bad, and it was just a preview of what was to come. In the morning, Snoop had run into rival gang members outside his apartment, and they got into an argument, as you would expect between rivals on the streets, but luckily for both sides, it ended okay. Later in the day, while Snoop was behind the wheel of his Jeep, he noticed the same group of rival gang members that he had beef with earlier in the day, and he accelerated until he and his friend Malik were face to face with the rivals. Malik rolled down his window, and naturally, the two groups started to argue. While they did, one of the rival gang members outside of the car named Philip Wolder Merriman looked to be reaching for his piece, but before he could, Malik pulled out his own and shot Philip, killing him. Snoop and Malik got out of there, and a few days later, Snoop turned himself in for his part in the murder. But as it goes, the trial didn't start until 2 years later in 1995. During the trial, Malik's defense argued that the shooting was in self-defense because Philip was preparing to pull his gun to fire at him and Snoop first. However, things looked grim because there was no evidence that Philip had any gun at all. That was until it was discovered that one of Philip's friends had taken the gun off of Philip's body in order to protect his image and hopefully get Malik and Snoop arrested. After that evidence came to light, it also became clear that the LAPD had grossly mishandled the investigation. They somehow managed to destroy Philip's clothing, bullets, and shell casings from the scene. So, Snoop and Malik were acquitted of all charges, but in the end, murder really was the case. Today, some argue that Snoop deserved to do time for what he and his friend did, but others argue that in a court of law, it was self-defense, and that even though the shooting broke out due to gang ties, it had to happen or we would have lost a rap legend. But while many argue about the morality of the act, not many people call him evil, or even worse, a serial killer. Cause in King Von's case, well, although he was murdered, people still curse his name to this day because by all accounts, he allegedly was an actual serial killer, and an incredibly dangerous one too, clocking in more kills than Jack the Ripper. Von grew up on O Block in Chicago, one of the most notorious neighborhoods in the United States, known for its violence and gang activity. From a very young age, Von was exposed to a very rough lifestyle, but unlike most people who look for a way out, he loved it, and from a very young age, got involved with the Black Disciples. But Von wasn't just a member, he was like the MVP shooter. Like if being a shooter was a team sport, Von would have jumped straight onto the varsity team as a freshman. When he was just 16 years old, Von was sent to juvie for armed robbery, but when he got out is when he really started to build his reputation as one of the deadliest shooters walking Chicago streets. If we were to get into the deep details of every single murder Von was allegedly tied to from 2012 onward, we'd literally be here for hours. But overall, Von tweeted about, wrote about, or was tied to the murder of over 10 different people, and that's just the official bodies. Some believe he killed upwards of 12 or 13 people, but for some reason kept those murders quiet. As far as cases that Von was officially questioned about, in 2014, police brought him in for the shooting of K.I., a rival gang member that was also known in the area for killing 12 people. Von was never charged with the shooting because of inconsistencies with witness statements, but he heavily hinted towards pulling the trigger several times afterwards, and was even named her official killer after his own death. That same year, Von was arrested in connection to another shooting, one that led to the death of one man and the injury of 2 more. Von was charged with 1 count of murder and 2 counts of attempted murder, but he was once again found not guilty a few years later. During this time, Von was known for bragging about taking bodies on Twitter, and at one point even admitted that he killed at least 5 GDs and shot at 10 more. Von constantly snitched on himself for murder, but never did any actual time for it. And now, years later after he was murdered himself, fans are still dumbfounded that if Von really was telling the truth, and he really was as bloodthirsty as he let on, how he got away with it for so long with 0 consequences. What makes Von's story most chilling is that the killing allegedly continued long after he was a successful artist. So unlike many that seemingly kill on the streets out of necessity, for Von, it felt like sport, his favorite game. His body count was insanely high, but he's not the only rapper who may have killed so many people that it's genuinely hard to believe. Boosie was a accused of killing so many people that he was very close to getting the death penalty. Yeah, the death penalty, which is something you don't hear about very often. It's saved for people that society deems to be true monsters. So that gives you a rough idea of what Boosie has been accused of. Throughout his life, Boosie has had several run-ins with the law and has even done serious prison time, like 10 plus years serious. But the case we're referring to now was back in 2010 when he was arrested on charges for the murder of Terry Boyd on October 21st, 2009. While Terry sat inside his home, he was shot and killed by surprise. Prosecutors claim that Boosie didn't pull the trigger, but instead hired another man named Michael Louding to do it for only $2,800, and it was all over a turf dispute.
Hatch's attorney, Jason Williams, says there was no bad blood between Hatch and the man who was killed. The alleged hitman, Michael Louding, faces murder charges in the deaths of 6 people over 14 months.
Throughout the trial, the prosecution also alleged that Boosie was involved in another 5 murders, meaning that if he was charged, Boosie would be convicted with 6 murders all at once. Boosie had several ongoing cases at the time, not all for murder. He was also dealing with very harsh drug and firearms possession charges, but his defense argued that he was not guilty, and they didn't even bring forward any witnesses because they were that confident. And well, they had reason to be that confident, because only 10 minutes after Boosie's defense made their plea, he was named not guilty and he got off the charges, ending a case that took 3.5 years to get through in court. Boosie was never charged for any of the other murder cases, but his co-defendant on the case admitted that when he was only 15 years old, he had already killed 9 people.
Shit, my co-defendant killed 9 people.
He got convicted of that?
And admitted to it.
Wait.
He was 15.
A stark and chilling reminder of how dangerous life on the street really is. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, we've got another one for you right here.